What has the GOP and RNC done since this last election to make sure that we've got secure elections in place? And the answer is nothing. When you have a powerful voice and when you are exposing lies, when you are giving people the roadmap to the truth, you are public enemy number one to the left. And that's what he became. He's not so much about where's Tucker landing next. I think the big issue is, why did Tucker get removed? And I started my monologue, and then I just went off script, and I just started telling the story of Chris Ruddy and the Clinton Foundation and me being handcuffed in terms of I can't talk about what I'm going to do anymore, and this is going to be my last show. They literally unplugged me from a live feed, and the screen went boo.
Making moves in media. It's still being talked about. We've had so many changes. We've had Don Lemon out at CNN, which was gloriously overshadowed by the departure of Tucker Carlson. We've had Bongino before that. And I stumbled upon Dennis Michael Lynch, who was a powerhouse at Newsmax back in the day. He's been kind enough to join me. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So I want to get into your whole story. So I know I want to talk about your CBD. I want to talk about how you got into media, all of that. But real quick, what I found most fascinating, kind of hooked me in, because Dennis has a very popular Facebook page. You should check it out. And what struck me about that is you're like, look, I was the #1 show, Newsmax, and I parted ways back in the day. So I can shed some light on why in the world a news network would get rid of their #1 show. So what was your first impression? Because most people are like, what? He was their golden ticket. What's going on here?
First impression of Tucker being let go. And nothing surprises me anymore, especially at Fox News. Prior to being the host at Newsmax Television, the show was called Dennis Michael Lynch Unfiltered, and it was leading up to the 2016 election. And I had started right away on the I love Trump bandwagon. In fact, I was probably one of the first people in the media to say, this is the guy we need. I go back to, I was given a speech in Michigan back in 2014. And during the Q&A, somebody asked me, who do you think can beat Hillary Clinton? And I said, there's one person I know definitely can beat her, and that's Donald J. Trump. And half the room laughed. Some people actually walked out on me. And I had lost all credibility. I had 1 hour speech. They all loved me. They were all ready to buy my movies and everything else, get my autograph. And then 2 seconds later, I got people leaving. And I bet you those same people wound up voting for Trump.
Yeah.
So what wound up happening is that, in my particular case, I was fighting for Trump every single night, and it was great ratings. And then at some point I felt as if I had hit that bell loud enough. Now I had to start doing more about Hillary. And the second I changed my tune, they cracked down on me. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I'm on Newsmax TV. This is supposed to be more conservative than Fox News. I'm the #1 show. When you're the king of a network, nobody bothers you for anything, Christy. And so I never got bothered for anything, but they wouldn't let me put on writers who wrote books that were negative about the Clintons and about Hillary Clinton. And so when I went back and asked management, why are you turning down my guests? Because every show has to do that. Tucker's as well. Maybe in your day, when you were doing your stuff too, maybe the same thing. But if you're a host and I want to have 5 people as guests earlier in the day, I have to send it up to management. In Fox News, it's called the second floor because that's where all the management is. And so they have to approve it. So in my case, I got disapproved for 2 guests that I couldn't understand. They came back to me and said, we see no reason to look in the past. There's enough about what's going on now that you could report on. And I said, that doesn't make any sense because all these women are coming out after Trump. 40 years ago, he touched me when I was on an airplane. And I was like, we could do that. We could talk about all his businesses, but we can't go back and talk about the Clintons and maybe, Vince Foster or whoever else it is. And they said, no, you can't. So I didn't feel comfortable at this. So I started looking up about Chris Ruddy, who is the CEO of Newsmax. And I learned that he was listed as a $1 million, between $1 million and $5 million donor to the Clinton Foundation. And I was like, whoa. And then I started looking up, and he actually gave speeches at CPAC. He wrote articles for the New York Post, and he actually wrote a book about how it is that he thought that the Clintons were engaged in what he thought was the murder of Vince Foster versus the suicide as it was chalked up. For people who don't remember, Vince Foster was one of the top lawyers for the Clintons, and mysteriously now all of a sudden this guy kills himself. So he went from being, we need to lock them up, to, oh, here's $1 million. How does that happen? Right? How does that happen? Now, ironically, when you're looking up who the $1 million donors are to the Clinton Foundation, right underneath Newsmax Media is one of the Murdoch boys. I think it's Lachlan, who also gave $1 million to, and for those who don't know, Murdoch's own Fox. So, right, they gave money to the Clinton Foundation. So I felt very uneasy about this. And what they wanted to do is eventually they sent me a letter that said that I had to comply with how they wanted my show to be versus me just having the freedom like I have right now with you. And they knew I would never do that because I'm stuck in my way.
It's just so ridiculous. The title of your show was Unfiltered, and they're like, yeah, moving forward, we're going to have to filter your show, basically is what they said, right?
Yes. And unlike Tucker Carlson, who had Hannity and the Five right beneath him in terms of ratings, there was no close number 2 in Newsmax. I was, as they called it, and I'm not looking to be egotistical, I'm telling you the story.
Just
they used
bringing the facts.
Yeah, they used to refer to me as the tent pole. So I was the guy who was holding up the tent and they were building around me. So I was their Tucker Carlson, or back then you would say I was their Megyn Kelly. That's why they came after me. They wanted me to be what they were going to build everything else around. And all of a sudden, here I am being told in letter format that I no longer control what topics I cover on my show. And the executive vice president of television, who was also a buddy of mine, said, they know you're never going to comply with this. And I said, no, you know what? I will. And I knew what I was going to do. The next day I said, let's do a live hit. Let's do it live versus recording. And I started my monologue, and then I just went off script, and I just started telling the story of Chris Ruddy and the Clinton Foundation and me being handcuffed in terms of I can't talk about what I'm going to do anymore. And this is going to be my last show. They literally unplugged me from a live feed, and the screen went boo.
Oh, come on, you had to have known that was going to happen. I mean, you just
yes, I
right
did.
into
Yes, Christy, I did know it was going to happen, and I'll tell you what. It's funny. Well, I had a hunch it was going to happen. What I did was, you know how it's like. So when you're on television, and you got a 3-camera shoot, number one camera is coming right in on me. Off screen, I had a guest who I knew was very Dennis friendly. So he was recording from his seat a Facebook Live. So this way, if they did shut me down, we would have what I was doing on there. And it worked out pretty well. But I was gone. I was escorted out of the building. My email shut down, everything.
Now, so wait, I got to ask, because this is just like inside baseball, obviously. Lead anchor, many years, local news, etc. And so I'm no stranger to having people in my ear. What was happening in your ear? Like, was anybody being like, what are you doing? Get off, shut up. Like, what was happening?
Dennis, Chris Ruddy called. He wants us to shut you down. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. Cause see, everybody at Newsmax.
But they were friendly. They like actually gave you some grace, or no?
They totally get. Listen, we were, what it's like. You've got your colleagues, and certain people become your friends. Yeah. Other people, especially when you're the host of a show, their job depends on you, right? So nobody wants to see me go. And on top of that, we're friends, and nobody agreed on our team that we should be censored. So I got Dennis, you got 2 minutes. So I knew something was going on. And then I passed the 2 minutes threshold, and they said, he's calling in. We got to pull the plug. So I knew it was coming. So to that degree, going back to your original question, and I just laid that out so people would understand why I know so much about this. For them to get rid of Tucker Carlson, that was not an easy decision, because first of all, and everybody was reporting that he was fired and he was gone, this and that. And some of the commentary I've given over the last 2 days, I said, listen, he's not totally gone, because they got to pay. If you have a contract like mine, and I know how Fox operates, you're going to have a non-compete in there, and you're going to have, at will employment, but you have to be fired. And if you're not fired with cause, they have to pay his contract. So my concern, and I think this is what's going to shock people, is Tucker's not, everybody's like, oh, Tucker's going to be on, the Daily Wire. Tucker's going to go to Newsmax, which he won't, because Newsmax, as far as I'm concerned, Tucker won't do that. But anyway, I can't slam Newsmax.
Let's back up real quick on that note, because clearly these articles have been flooding out, and some of them have said that, Christopher Ruddy is interested and they're bringing something together, putting something together for to give Tucker an offer. But I mean, clearly Tucker cannot be controlled. He is not a propaganda puppet, as I like to call it, like as you were not, and you could not be controlled. So, I mean, is he just acting like they're interested, or do you think that they truly would be interested in bringing him over?
Well, I mean, first of all, you would have to be crazy if you're anywhere in the conservative movement. So, and there's only certain people who could afford him, by the way. That's where I think Newsmax is. I mean, I'm not privy to Newsmax's books, but I have a general idea of what they're earning. And I can tell you that I just don't see how he can afford Tucker Carlson. That's number one. Number two is I don't think Tucker Carlson will look at Chris Ruddy and what he's done in the past. I know Tucker. Tucker's going to look at what they did to me. And I think that Tucker will say right then and there, no, I'm not going to Newsmax. And then on top of that, Fox News will do everything they possibly can to keep him from going to Newsmax. So that's probably the most important thing of all. But I don't think Tucker wants to go from one place to where he had to watch what he says to another place to where he has to watch what he says. I mean, I think he has a great fit at the Daily Wire. They've got a lot of money. They've got huge funding. The two people who fund that whole place are billionaires down in Texas. They're oil magnets. So, I mean, they've got plenty of money. And then I think you also look at something like Rumble, to where maybe Tucker gets a deal like Steven Crowder just got with Rumble, where he'll make $50 to $100 million. Or maybe you get somebody like Spotify who comes in and realizes the fact that Tucker Carlson could actually be the next Joe Rogan. So I think there's a lot of options for Tucker Carlson. He's not going to go away. I just don't think people are going to see him as quick as they would like to see him. And my concern is that he won't be around in time for 2024, because he's going to be locked up with Fox News on a battle on, first of all, he gets paid $20 million a year, according to the Wall Street Journal. I'm not surprised by that number. So, I mean, that's a lot of money for Tucker Carlson to leave on the table. Nobody's going to pay him $20 million at Newsmax or anything like that. So he's not going to leave that money on the table, and Fox News is just not going to let him go compete against them. So it's going to be a very rough and ugly road going ahead. And I wouldn't be surprised if you don't hear anything from Tucker Carlson for a good 6 months to a year.
Wow.
But I'm not, I think the bigger issue here for me anyway, Christy, is not so much about where's Tucker landing next. I think the big issue is, why did Tucker get removed? Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to move your biggest person out of your lineup and your stock is going to fall by 4%. I mean, I know I already gave up on my Fox Nation subscription. And the only reason why I had a Fox Nation subscription was because I liked Tucker Carlson today. If it wasn't Tucker Carlson, I never put on Fox News. So to that degree, there must have been something Herculean that forced Rupert Murdoch and management to say, we are better off without this guy than we are with him. And I could only think that message is absolutely powered by the left, by the White House, and by people who you would consider being rhinos.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Paul Ryan.
So you had a couple comments about Dan Bongino when I listened to your whole thing. I was listening to his show from yesterday as I was getting ready, putting my makeup on this morning. And it was interesting to me that he was saying, yeah, maybe Newsmax could be a thing for Tucker. I mean, he could have editorial control over there. I was really surprised hearing that from Bongino right after hearing you tell, because I didn't know this I knew something was weird with Newsmax because of what happened to Emerald Robinson and some other things, but I didn't know it was to the extent of that their CEO had donated to the Clinton Foundation and literally wrote an article in defense of titled "In Defense of the Clinton Foundation. That kind of blew my mind. I didn't know that part. So I was surprised to hear Dan Bongino being like, yeah, and he could have more editorial control over there. What is he just completely in the dark on this, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Dan Bongino. He's very successful, and he has a great microphone in terms of large reach. But I think he's talking out of school here, to be quite honest. First of all, there is no there is no person in television who has complete editorial control. So your contract may read, so my contract, I can't get into the nitty gritties with it, but I could go high surface.
Mhm.
So having had a contract with Newsmax, I know that ultimately you can have certain creative control, but at the end of the day, they have editorial control. Two different things, right? So if I want my theme music to be a little bit more rock and roll, I can do that. But if I want to put on Hillary Clinton's worst foe, I can't do that. So if he being Chris Ruddy, is going to break the mold that he has in place for Tucker Carlson, he's going to set himself up for more lawsuits. So I think Dan Bongino is just talking out of left field, because remember, Newsmax is still up against a lawsuit with Dominion. Now, Dominion just took $787 million from Fox News. Fox News has that sort of money, but it's going to take a huge dent in their pocket. Chris Ruddy does not have $787 million. If he does, then I don't understand why he isn't advertising more, because, $787 million. So he's still in a lawsuit with Dominion, and Chris Ruddy loves headlines, loves to be, he always wanted to be Roger Ailes. All right. And he always chased after Roger Ailes. So I can tell you, my feeling is that Dan Bongino and everybody else is chasing down a rat hole that he is going to go to Newsmax. He's not going to, I just don't, I know how Tucker operates. He's not going to go to Newsmax. He is not going to go to Newsmax. It's too small for him. It's too small for him. If I was advising Tucker Carlson tomorrow, and I sat down with him and said, look, Tucker, I understand the internet. I understand what it's like when you lose your show. I mean, I can tell you right now, I think Tucker Carlson's going to go through, he's going to go through a depression. I mean, I can tell you it is one of the most difficult things that I had to go through when I got ripped off Newsmax. And we could go into that if you want. But if I were advising him, I would tell him first and foremost, go the Joe Rogan route. Go the Joe Rogan route. You already have everything built. I mean, most of what you see where, Tucker doesn't, let me step back. Tucker used to operate out of the Washington, D.C. Area. That's where he lived. Antifa came and smashed down his door, if you remember, cracked his door. His wife was hiding in a closet. Shortly after that, he moved to Florida. And from what I know, everything that he's doing operationally is on or about in the area of where his house is. So everything is sort of already set up. He can have a Joe Rogan-like podcast in the same way that he was doing his Tucker Carlson Today, because that's what that was. He was doing one-on-one interviews. So he could set up and do it immediately. He'd probably get himself $100 million from Spotify, and it would be a pretty easy thing for him to do. He could probably make $100,000 a speech and be happy and not have the pressure of network television. Mm-hmm. And I think so in my particular case, and I think this is where Tucker's going to land himself, because he and I are the same age. I think what he's going to recognize, the first week is this: you're pissed off. You're absolutely pissed off. All your friends are texting you. Everybody's calling you. You're reading about yourself online. And remember, I mean, if I was popularity of 3, he's a 10. So for every article there was about me, there's going to be 10 more about him. So what he's probably doing right now is on Twitter, reading every article, reading every comment, responding to texts in any kind of way he can, sort of like, hey, thanks, Sean. But that's as far as he's going.
Yeah.
And then a week or 2 from now, he's going to start missing the show. He's going to feel empty. He's going to feel like he needs to do something because his voice needs to be heard. He needs to be heard. And then when he's not heard, he's going to go into a depression, not a deep depression, but it starts to feel as if your life was stripped from you because you worked your whole life to get your name on a television show. You become number one, you're cruising, people think you walk on water, and then you recognize the fact that you're just a man and you put one foot into your pants the same way everybody else does. And so, it will happen. And then he's going to have to come to terms with that. And eventually the way you do come to terms is you put your energy into your family. And I think that's what he'll wind up doing, and realize the fact that it's a lot of fun when you get more time off and you don't have the pressure of 8 o'clock every single night, and you start to enjoy life. So I think that's where I would advise him over a steak dinner. I would tell him, don't go back into what you were. Do a new chapter.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I definitely have dealt with that myself. I mean, being a news anchor, as stupid as it sounds, was my childhood dream. And, to build up my career, to win awards from the Associated Press, which now I think is just huge trash bag of an organization, but all of that was so rewarding, and so it became my identity. And I know probably you as well, when you got sucked into the media machine, like it became your identity. So when you make that choice to leave, like you did, and I did, you definitely kind of like have an identity crisis. What now? I'm not sure. Like, I knew my goals, I knew how to get to this point. Now what? So.
It is. Listen, Chrissy, it's very difficult. I mean, like you said, you went through it, and it's whenever we go out with my family back in the Newsmax days, and definitely on my Fox days, it happened on, all the time on Fox, because Megyn Kelly used to have me on 3 times a week, and it just would be one-on-one. I wasn't on a panel or anything. I was one-on-one. So, I mean, if I was at Kmart with my wife picking up a bicycle for my daughter, I remember we did that one time, and, I couldn't get out of the store without people asking me for my autograph, whatever. I'd go to dinner. People would buy me dinner. I'd be in the airport. People would be like, I saw you on Megyn last night. Keep up the great work. And so what starts to happen is that it's a mix of ego, and then it's also a mix of feeling as if you're doing something for the world, or at least for your country, and getting the news out. So it starts to become almost like a crack cocaine.
Yeah.
You get addicted to people caring so much about what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in Tucker's case, because I do know him, he used to interview me all the time back when I was on Fox News. And then when he was Fox and Friends, he would have me on all the time. And I love this one little story. My daughter, Ashley, who's sitting right across from me right now, she had a school project. It was go to work with your dad day. So I had a hit on Fox. So I said, why don't you come into Fox, take your camera, whatever it may be. And I said, you could watch me from, Tucker's going to interview me. So when I got in there, Tucker said, oh, who's this? And I introduced him. I told him the whole story. He literally moved the cameraman. He moved the camera so my daughter could have the best spot for her recording of our segment. And then after that, he was supposed to do another hit outside on Fox and Friends. You know how they do that? They do an outside something or other. He had somebody else go do it so he could sit there and take pictures and talk to my daughter. So, I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. I used to feed him stuff all the time because he used to be back when he had Fox, before he had his nighttime show, he also was an owner of the Daily Caller. So he used to be a part owner of that. So I used to get stuff from the Border Patrol. This is all during Obama's presidency, when they were having surges at the border. And I remember that they would send me photos that you're not supposed to get, videos, and I would always send it to Tucker because, I didn't have a presence other than on Fox News. I didn't have a website or any of this other. I didn't have my Facebook page or my Rumble or anything. So I would send it to Tucker, and Tucker would wind up putting it out there. So we became friendly, and he is such a good person. The fact that they blast him as being a racist and a misogynist and a xenophobe and a transphobe and all this other stuff, AOC just said about how it is that, he incited violence. I have never, ever, ever heard Tucker Carlson call for violence, ever. In fact, I don't know if you remember this, Christy, or not, but there was a video that went viral. He was in a Montana fishery shop, fishing poles, everything, like a Mountain Gear kind of place. And some idiot liberal went up to him and started like getting in his face with his kids.
Oh, I've seen that
remember,
clip,
with his kids there.
Yeah.
And Tucker diffused it. Now, I can tell you this without doubt. My daughter will probably laugh at this. If that's me in that Montana fishery and my daughter is there and some guy gets into my face, that guy, it's over. He is on his back
How do I know
faster
that?
than he couldn't. I'd hit him so hard, Montana would have an earthquake. And Tucker didn't do that. He
Yeah.
de-escalated the whole thing. So, it's just when you have a powerful voice and when you are exposing lies, when you are giving people the roadmap to the truth, you are public enemy number one to the left. And that's what he became. You may have more people listening to Joe Rogan or more people listening to Dan Bongino or any one of these other podcasters.
Alex Jones.
Yeah. I mean, look, they're reaching, by the time that all their clips are watched and everything's, they may be reaching 5-6 million people, double what Tucker's reaching on Fox News. But because he was Fox News, his stuff came with a level of credibility that meant more than what any of these other guys had to say. And that's why he was so damn powerful. I mean, the interviews he was getting, he just sat down with Elon Musk for 3 days. He's got Trump saying he wants to do it. He could get Putin on if he wants. He's the most powerful voice in media, maybe notwithstanding Joe Rogan, because they go at different target audiences.
Right.
But I mean, that's why he's enemy number one. And Fox News, that I go back to the bigger thing that we should be discussing. Why did Fox News rid of this man? Is it because of text messages he had with Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham? Why isn't Sean fired? Why isn't Laura fired?
Right.
Because they were knocking. There's a woman there. I couldn't stand her. Irina Briganti. She's sort of, I think she's the Wicked Witch of Fox News. Nobody ever knows about her, but she's sort of the spokesperson. She's how all the trains come in and out behind the scenes. So they were slamming her, rightfully so. She's a witch. Laura Ingraham. Why she still have her show? Why is Sean still there? Why is Kilmeade still there? What did Sean say? I mean, what did Tucker say? If anything, Tucker said he wasn't crazy about Trump. He didn't think the election was stolen.
Any more should give him more credibility because they act like everyone's all in with Trump, so to me, it seems like that would have been like a good thing.
Yeah. And the other thing about Tucker is that he's like a little terrier that grabs onto the pant leg and doesn't let go. So you talk about January 6th, you talk about the COVID vaccines, you talk about the elections. Tucker's not going to let that go. And you're not going to control him in the same way you weren't going to tell me I wasn't going to be able to go anti-Hillary Clinton because you gave $1 million and now you're chumming up and writing articles that you think she'd be a great president. I'm not going to shut up. I'd rather lose my show like I did. So, and you know what? I mean, look, Tucker's got, when I lost my show at Newsmax, I had always done well for myself, but I wasn't swimming in money by any means. Tucker's swimming in money. So the last thing he's worried about right now is like, hey, how am I going to pay my bills? But I remember when I left, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, really, I'm no more at Fox, because once you're at Fox and you go to Newsmax, you're finished. They will not take you back. So I wasn't going back there. I said, what am I going to do? I mean, that's how you found me. You found me on Facebook. I literally came up with the idea with nothing else in my head that I started doing what was called a walk and talk. I just do a Facebook Live before Facebook Live was big. I'd walk around my neighborhood, talk about the election, talk about stuff. And before you know it, I'd have 14, 15,000 people watching me. And my numbers blew up like crazy. And then that led to so many different opportunities, a podcast, a website, DML CBD, Team DML. So, I mean, I've done better in business since being fired from Newsmax than I was when I was on Fox News and Newsmax combined. So to that extent, I think whatever it was that led to the firing of Tucker Carlson, as far as money goes and career goes, he's going to catapult. The problem is he's not going to be able to do it in the time frame that we want him and need him here, because I think Fox News, whatever was that underlying reason, it's going to continue in such a way to where they're not going to want to let him out of the cage.
Yeah. I mean, and to that end, do you think that was kind of part of the plan or orchestrated a bit behind the scenes, is to do it now so that he couldn't have as big of an influence, or at least that was their hope for this as we get more into this new election cycle?
Yeah, I think, you go back to Dan Bongino for a second.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Dan Bongino lied by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a pretty honest guy. I've only met him one time. I don't really listen to his show at all. I don't watch his television show, but I think he's a solid. I don't buy that Fox News and Dan Bongino couldn't come to terms. I just don't buy it, because when you have a television show on a weekend that is the highest rated 95% of the time, when you reach all the people that you reach in your other avenues, i.e. Rumble, i.e. radio show, i.e. Facebook, Fox News does not want to lose that flow of eyeballs. So to get rid of Dan Bongino meant that they had to say, we ain't paying him that dollar amount, and that's the way we get out of this. That's my opinion. Unless Dan Bongino asked for something stupid like $1 million a show, right? Then I believe that Fox News gave him a price that almost forced him to walk away, because he and Tucker are the two biggest voices that go against the grain. Hannity, Hannity's I don't have anything good to say about him. And I mean, I could tell you, I could tell you stories. I mean, and people forget it. They got short memories. I mean, this guy called for amnesty after Romney lost his election. And it's like, wait, what kind of conservative does that?
Yeah.
And he said, we'd never win another election again unless we were a little bit more friendly, if you will, to the whole idea that these people are just good people and they want to they want to have a hard day's work in their pocket, and that's it. But yes, that's a lie. Look what happened. Trump went totally anti illegal alien, and he won. So that's what and then on top of that, search the internet. Sean Hannity, Don Lemon, Getty Images, and watch the two of them taking selfies like they're bro friends. And so he's useless.
Yeah.
I think they got rid of the two voices that could get them in trouble again, whether it be January 6th, COVID, or the upcoming election.
Yeah, which is really sad, because again, I mean, the reason I had to leave my passion, my dream job, is because I saw that it wasn't following journalistic integrity, the tenets of journalism, which are just so simple. Hold those in power accountable. Be a voice for the voiceless. I mean, we are now doing the opposite of that in mainstream media. We're being a voice for the government, just parroting press releases, and active in censorship, not being a voice for the voiceless at all. So complete opposite of that. And that's why I left. Well, Dennis, I know my time is up with you, probably over, but you're fascinating to talk to. I wanted to talk about you more. So maybe someday when you have some time, we can.
If you got a couple more minutes, I got another
awesome.
10 minutes.
Yes, let's do it. I would love to hear. I know that you had some interesting things to say about election reform, which is a huge thing for me. I read articles like Carrie Lake is 28-point lead as possible pick for Arizona Senate. I'm like, so what? Because I mean, what does that matter? She clearly had some crazy things happening in the governor's race. So why wouldn't that just happen again? And the polls, like, none of them mean anything, because just the fact that all signs point to just another selection, no debates. I mean, come on. So I would love to hear your thoughts about that. I also really interested in how you got into CBD, because that's just kind of something different. So if we could hit those 2 points in this last bit, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll go with the CBD because that's less important and a much shorter explanation. I was, again, after Newsmax, I had built a big following on social media, knew I wanted to create a business of some kind off of it. So I started the DML News app, which is sometimes we'd get more downloads than Fox. And we have a news feed that just goes all day long. And so all the people that had followed me on Fox News, Newsmax, and Facebook, I really never did the Twitter thing or any of these other places. I just figured be great at one thing versus good at a bunch. So what winds up happening is I started getting unbelievable pains. And I'm a young athletic guy, and to the point of where I couldn't even walk. And it was just so bizarre. We didn't know what it was. We went to so many different specialists. And I mean, in the back of my head, I thought I was dying. You start thinking all the worst things in the world. And so my daughter wanted to go to the Bahamas, and I had to film in the Bahamas for an immigration film I was doing. So I said, I'll tell you what, we'll go together. So we went together, and we rented a house, and the guy who rented us the house took us to lunch, and he saw me get up from the table and I couldn't mask the pain. And long story short, he said to me, "You got to try my CBD." And I said, "I don't do drugs." And he said, "It's not drugs." I knew nothing about it. He gave me his stuff. I started taking it. Everything went away. So I went home and I had it re-engineered. I put a little bit of extra stuff that I wanted in it for other things like sleep and anxiety. And then I just started my own label. And the first day I went on Facebook, I said, "Hey, I got my own CBD company." And it was boom. It just rocketed. And then, I mean, if Tucker Carlson wants to make a gazillion, do Tucker CBD. He'll be in it all day long. But what wound up happening is 7 months later, really the best thing that ever happened to our business happened, and that was COVID. I hate to say it, but people were looking for things that would help boost their immune system. And so CBD is a great way of doing that. And that's how it is that we really just rocketed to be one of the, I think, the biggest online sellers of CBD, because I don't have it in stores. I don't, put it in any of these other different, I don't wholesale it out. I just sell directly on dmlcbd.com to consumers who come in, and it's, tens of thousands of people. We've filled their orders, and our stuff is tested and it's fantastic. It's changed my life and a lot of other lives. But with that said, if you want to talk about the election stuff, I could be here all day long with you.
I guess what's the biggest frustration that you have with it? Like, do you feel like the media doesn't cover it enough, or is afraid to now, especially with this whole Dominion thing? Or, what's your biggest frustration there?
I've because I'm, you and I know how the sausage is made, right? We know what it's like. Whereas the other person who's watching through the television thinks everything else is so perfect, right? They don't realize right now that off to the side, I got a pair of my dirty socks, or, back in the days, the network, somebody was off to the side sneezing, coughing, the camera wasn't working, you had to change, the teleprompter went out. They don't see that, right? So what I understand is that the media is basically controlled at the very top. And so whoever at the top is, if they say, "Don't report that story, don't put that on, don't get that guest," that's where it's being controlled from, at the very, very top. So my disappointment in the media is ongoing, but I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
Where my frustration comes is with the GOP and the RNC, because when Trump won, he didn't win the popular vote. He won the electoral vote because Hillary Clinton blew off the Rust Belt. She didn't go to Wisconsin. She thought she had all these other different states there all locked up. And even Bill Clinton, according to Trump, said, "We're going to lose this. I see Trump signs everywhere in these states. We got to go there." And Hillary's like, "Don't worry about it." That's why they lost. Well, the left didn't want to lose again. They hated Trump. They love to hate Trump. There is no politician in our lifetime that has ever been hated more than that man.
Yeah.
And when you look at hate, it is a very, very huge emotion. People kill over hate, right? It is just such a bad driver. So when you look at that, it leads the Democrats to do whatever they need to do in order to rid of him. And so my problem is that nobody at the GOP or RNC seems to recognize that and care. Or if they did recognize it and care, they did nothing about it. They turned a blind eye because they too didn't want Trump. Fox News didn't want Trump. The only thing that Fox News liked about Trump was Trump is a ratings, he is a ratings king. All right. I mean, he could just eat an egg sandwich and it would be the biggest thing that you see on Fox News. So with that said, my concern is, what has the GOP and RNC done since this last election to make sure that we've got secure elections in place? And the answer is nothing. Because if you look at the Democrats, look what happened. They're like, "How are we going to beat him? He's doing great on the economy. He's doing good on the border. He's doing everything that we hate. How do we get rid of him?" And then COVID came. And they realized the fact that they can play games with those ballots. We can do mail-in ballots. We could get people who never voted before because we couldn't mobilize them. We couldn't get them from their lazy sofa and get them to the booth. They now found a way to where you can get the lazy to cast the vote. And if they're still going to be so lazy, not even to fill it out, you go and you harvest the ballots. And what does the Republican Party do? They complain about it on Twitter. They complain about it on Fox. They do nothing. So are you going to change those processes? No way. So you know what you have to do? You have to fight fire with fire. So if they're going to put people on going house to house, we need to put people on going house to house. If they're going to play games where they're going to have people drop things off in mailboxes, we need to play games where we're dropping things off in mailboxes. I mean, you want a roadmap to how it gets done? Watch Dinesh D'Souza's 2000 Mules. Everything you need to know how to win an election is right there for you. But I never, ever, ever hear anything out of the GOP or the RNC about this. I never hear anything out of Trump about it. You know, if I were Trump, instead of putting out NFT cards and worried about whether or not I'm waiting for Lee Greenwood to stop singing before I get up and speak about myself, I would be screaming, where is the RNC and the GOP working towards a secure election? Nothing. Look at DeSantis. I'll give you the floor after this one. I talked too long here. Look at this. You tricked me into this one because you brought that up. You know, I'll talk all day about this. When you look at Ron DeSantis, that's what it is that Trump should be doing. The GOP and the RNC should be doing. DeSantis knew that there were dirty players here in Florida. And what he did is he spent years cleaning it up, looking for that next gubernatorial run. And what did he do? There's no ballot harvesting here. He made sure he had people at every single polling place. We had this place covered. There was going to be no fraud here at all. And anybody who did conduct fraud in the prior election, when he got elected, there was a woman, I can't remember, I think it was out of Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach or somewhere around there in Broward County. He had her removed because she was part of I think an election. She was one of the election chiefs. She was gone. He got rid of people. And what did he do? He won by 20 points. So why isn't everybody doing what DeSantis did on a national level or on a state level? I just don't see it. So that's where my concern comes, Christy, because whether it's Trump or DeSantis, it doesn't matter. We still got the Democrats. It doesn't matter if they throw Biden up there. They're going to play their games. And the media is useless.
Yeah.
I go to the Twitter feeds of the RNC. I go to the Twitter feeds of the GOP. And you know what it is? They put up videos of Biden looking like a fool. We got it. We get it. The guy can't find his ass with both hands. He's suffering from 80-year-old body and brain. Let's move on past this. And they don't know how to win. They only know how to lose.
Yeah, it's extremely maddening. Well, it is such a joy to talk to you, and I hope we can do it again sometime. But where can people find you and follow you and support you?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Christy. So they could download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, depending on device. That right there, you get my podcast, you get my DML CBD, you could get all my links to all my social media. That's basically the hub. So if they could download that, it's completely free. They won't be disappointed. And I appreciate what you're doing. And I encourage you to keep it up. And maybe we'll do a reciprocal where you could be on my program.
Yeah, that would be great. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I'm the worst marketer in the world, as many of my followers know. So I will give this a shot, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. All right, Christy. So long. Thank you so much.